shared and okay, now I can share my screen. So, of course, we missed last week for Shavuot. So we will, oh, okay. Sorry, I don't know why this is being so weird. So I just wanted to review the like chapter one, which we looked at, and remind us where we're up to right now. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. My computer is really giving me a bit of a runaround here. All right. So, okay, where did we start? So we said first of all that Amos, he is from Judah, right? We're introduced to him in the beginning of chapter one. So he's from Tekoa, which is in the territory of Judah, not Israel. And he prophesies concerning Israel. So that's already an interesting dynamic. And that it's time 2 years before this earthquake, right? It seems that there was an earthquake at some point. Some people read this metaphorically of this Rash. What was this Rash? But plenty of people don't and say, no, there really was an earthquake, and this is how they timed it. Um, and he is a shepherd also, right? We have this weird word that he was a Asher Hayab Benokdim, right? We don't know exactly what that means, right? But one of the understandings is that it means that he was a shepherd. So we've got this guy from Judah prophesizing against Israel. And he yells in that he's, here, Mitzion Yishagim Yerushalayim Yiten Kolo, right? God roars from Zion and shouts aloud from Jerusalem. And now he goes into parallel um, prophecies about a number of nations. So he starts with Damascus, which is Aram. And the form for each of these nations is for three transgressions of Damascus, like I've kind of looked the other way, but the fourth, I'm not going to forgive. And there are different opinions if the fourth actually happens, excuse me, or if this is just a warning against a fourth. Ultimately, doesn't really change our understanding. So the first is against Damascus, what did Damascus do? They threshed Gilad with threshing boards of iron, which seems, to be like they did some like really horrible things to the bodies in Gilad when they were at war there. And so God says, "V'shilachti eish beveit Chazael." I'm going to send a fire down to the palace of Chazael, and it's going to ve'achla Armenot ben Hadad, and it's going to devour the fortresses. And I'm going to break the gates of Damascus, wipe out all of these inhabitants, and exile the people. Okay, right. So Aram, they clearly did something really gruesome and grotesque to the people, and now they're going. This is God's revenge on them. One of the I listened to the OU Torat Imecha podcasts, and one year the woman mentioned that. I think it was Rev Benny Lau who points out that all the sins we're going to see that these nations committed were actually all basically war crimes, right? That they didn't adhere to the basic sense of war. The issue isn't that they went to war, it's that of how their behavior during the war. So that was the first, Aram. Okay. And then we go to Gaza, to Gaza, where the Philistines are. And the problem is here that they exiled this entire population to Edom. And so, how is God going to get revenge on them? Once again, Vishilachti Eish, right? God's going to send this fire. What's the fire going to do? It's going to devour the fortresses, wipe out the inhabitants of Ashdod, and the Philistines will perish without even a she'erit, right? Without any kind of remnant. So the Philistines are going to be gone. And also, I think I mentioned this last time. It's interesting that if you think about the map of where these places are, right? Aram is in the north, and then Aza is like in the south. And so we're there. It's kind of ping ponging, right? Where each of the prophecies is going to be. So it's curious to think what effect that would have had on the listeners. Is it disorienting or not to be bopping all over the place? Okay, those are the first two. Then we get to Tsur, to Tyre. One of these ancient nations. And what did they do? That they handed over this entire nation to Edom, velo zachru brit achim, right? They didn't remember, here it's translated as ignored, the covenant of brotherhood, Right. One of the things that is so upsetting with these ancient nations is that we had different pacts, right? Breeds with the different nations, and that they were ignored here. And so once again, what's God going to do? V'shilachti ish, right? I'm going to send this fire. It's going to devour the fortresses. But there isn't anything else. There isn't another follow-up there. Then we move straight to Edom. Once again, so what did Edom do? That al radfo b'cherev achiv. He pursued his brother with the sword, the shichet rachamav, and repressed all pity. And yeah, so that is what we have here. So in that anger, this it's some of the focus seems to be on the betrayal of relationship also, right? It's not just that you were a random nation, is that but we were supposed to be in relationship with one another and they betrayed this. And so God's going to send fire down. Then we get to Ammon. What did Ammon do? This really horrific, gruesome imagery, ripped open the pregnant woman of Gilad. And we talked about how that wasn't necessarily everyone's translation, but some of us had that as the translation in order to enlarge their own territory. And so, what's God gonna do? Different word than v'shilachti, v'hitzati, Aish, to devour Ammon, and their king and his officers will go into exile. Now, we also talked about, we did the first three verses of the chapter two because it makes more sense to do it that way because the first three verses are the final nation that we're yelling at first, which is Moab. Right. So what does Moab do? Sarfo atzmot melech Edom la seed, that burned the bones of the king of Edom to lime. Right. So it captured the king of Edom, and like I said earlier, you did this really disgusting thing. And it's strange for the offense to be on behalf of Edom, but yeah, there's also seems to be some objective moral outrage here. And so God's going to send this fire down on Moab and destroy the shofet and the sarim, the judge, the ruler, and the officials. Okay, that was a lot of review. Basically, what we have is seven parallel prophecies against all the other nations. Like I said, ping-ponging around a little bit. And so if you imagine you're the people of Israel, right? Because Amos is prophesying in the north, and you hear these prophecies against all these other nations, you're probably feeling pretty good at this point because you want to hear about how these people, your enemies, are going to be destroyed. But then also, what some have pointed out is you've got, Israel and Judah were distinct kingdoms, distinct peoples at this time. They'd separated 150 years ago, and they didn't have a good relationship. And yet, so at the same time as you're like happy to be hearing these prophecies against your enemies, you're also suspicious, and you're like, oh, but who are you, right? Like I'm in the north, I'm in Israel. Why is this guy from Judah coming and telling me all of these things? With that in mind, we can finally go to verse 4 in chapter 2. Because what happens now? Now Amos, he's not done, actually. He now says, Ko amar Hashem al shlosha pish'ei Yehuda ve'al arba'a lo ashivenu. Now God says, wait a minute, I'm doing the same thing to Judah, right? What I just said to all these other nations, I've also got one in my pocket for Judah as well, right? So this, if you imagine how is Amos winning over the trust of the Northerners, this is a good way to do it, to show I'm even going to criticize Judah, the Southern Kingdom, right? Your adversary. And so, what does God say about Judah? Al ma'asam et Torat Hashem v'chukav lo shamaru v'yatum kizvehem asher halchu avotam achrehem. So they've spurned the teaching of God and have not observed divine laws. They are beguiled by the delusions after which their ancestors walked. So my question I always have is, does anyone have any other translations of this first, of what Yehuda did?
Um,
Starting from where?
Ooh, here, hang on, I'm gonna mute Janet's iPhone. Starting with what Judah did, because they spurned the teaching of God. Do you have the Torah of Hashem? Does anyone have that? The Torah of God? Or does everyone have teaching?
Um, I have law.
Law. Oh, interesting. Okay. Interesting. All right. But if no one's speaking up, I assume we're kind of looking at similar translations here. Um, all right.
Where they're
Mhm.
despising the Torah of Hashem and not observing his statutes.
Okay. Okay, so it's focused on law. Okay, great. Now, so God continues, just like the other ones, V'shilachti eish b'Yehuda ve'achla armenot Yerushalayim. I'm going to send down fire upon Judah, and it shall devour the fortresses of Jerusalem. Now, this is interesting because, of course, this is going to happen, but it's going to happen after the northern kingdom is already long gone. Why doesn't my guy doesn't have any comments on verse 5? I wonder why that is. Okay. Any comments from footnotes or otherwise on these two verses, on the Judah stuff?
Well, just a question.
Hmm.
Um, isn't Judah the southern?
Yeah. Yeah. And so Judah's the southern kingdom. Amos is talking in the north. And so perhaps to gain credibility, favorability with the northerners, he's showing, look, I'm willing to even prophesize doom about the southern kingdom also. Right. So the theory is this is a way of hooking the Northern Kingdom because in the next verse, which we'll see in a moment, now we're going to go after the Northern Kingdom. Right. This is all kind of really like the buildup, in a sense, to going after the Northern Kingdom. Yeah. Okay. I will assume that no one has any good footnotes or anything on this. So let's move to verse 6. And you remember just thinking about like the listener and how captivated they are at this point. And it's almost like a form of gossip or something, right? Where you're like, ooh, what's gonna happen to all these people I don't like? And now we come in, Ko amar Hashem al shosha pish'ei Yisrael. Be'al arba'a lo ashivenu. So now if you're in Israel, like, oh no, right? Like I thought I was not going to be part of this, and now here you are. What did they do? Amichram b'kesef tzadik ve'evyon be'avur na'alayim. We're going to see there's actually 7 sins that are listed. There's a lot of sins here. So, what is one of them? They sold for silver those whose cause was just, right? They sold a tzaddik for kesef, the evyon and the needy, the destitute, ba'avur na'alayim, for a pair of shoes. So that is the literal translation. And of course, we can imagine there are a lot of opportunities for interpretation about what exactly this is. Right, my guy says, well, he points out it could mean that they were taking bribes, or anything, but that it's a general moral idea, but doesn't have a specific crime attached to it, the selling the tzaddik for the silver.
No.
Yeah.
I don't have anything about shoes or sandals. Sorry.
Really? You don't? What do you have?
Um, uh, for locking the fields, like Na'al also doesn't, this is what it's saying. For
Hmm.
selling an innocent man for money and a poor man in order to lock the fields. I don't know where that comes from.
What?
Yeah, the word "nal" means lock.
Right.
Right.
And they're talking about affecting people. So,
So like locking out the poor person,
Yeah.
presumably from your life.
so yeah, from your field. So a poor person
They
could go
pervert
to
the,
the
they pervert the judgment. This is in the footnote of the poor man, so that he will be compelled to sell his fields that he has between the fields of the judges, and this one seeks an opportunity to take it for a cheap price in order to fence it in and lock out all of the fields.
That's just so interesting because my guy doesn't mention it, and I didn't hear that in any of the things I was reading in advance. So, okay, cool. That would probably make more sense, right? Because what if we keep it as shoes, right, which might be more literal, of course, we have to figure out exactly what the significance of shoes here is, right? My guy points out that like it could mean, oh, just it's just a pair of shoes, or it could mean also that he said that they walked a lot, right? And it might be that shoes actually were really like cherished items as a result.
Yes, the second interpretation is a stretch.
Yeah, the locked part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there is nothing here of locking out the pool.
yeah. Hmm. Okay, that's very interesting. I'm so glad we shared. All right. So, next one. Hasho'afim al afar eretz berosh dalim v'derech anavim yatu v'ish v'aviv yelchu el ha'ne'ara leman chalel et shem kodeshi. Ah, you who trample the heads of the poor into the dust of the ground and make the humble walk a twisted course. Father and son go to the same woman and thereby profane my holy name. Okay, so really, this is two ideas. So the first one, you trample the heads of the poor into the dust of the ground. Does anyone have different translations of any of this?
Um, they aspire as they walk on the dust of the earth for the head of the poor, and they twist the judgment of the humble. A man and his father go to a maiden in order to desecrate my holy name.
Hmm, that's
So
pretty different.
the father and the son, in other words, both go to um, have sex with
Yeah.
the same woman.
Hmm.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, my here, he reads the path thing literally that the wicked ones cause the humble ones to have to take like a roundabout path because they're afraid of the wicked people who are like kind of what's the word I'm looking for? They're like out in the road, in the main road. Loitering, I don't know what it would be exactly, right? And so the people who don't want to get involved with them have to like literally like go, around in order to get to where they're going. Any footnotes, comments?
Nope.
Okay. Um, yeah, and also, so the question with the second half is, what is the purpose of a father and son both sleeping with the same woman? Is it that so my guy says l'shem newt, right, for the purpose of promiscuity. And so is it that so and then he quotes like different perspectives. Some people say that father and son would see the same woman and wouldn't be embarrassed, or excuse me, is it that this was for the purposes of idol worship, right? I've heard different like opinions of as to what exactly is the reason behind this, why they would do this, or is it just circumstantial?
It's 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 pretty disgusting when you think of it. I mean,
I know, I know.
um,
It's gross. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so on to our next one. Ve'al begadim chavulim yatu etzel kol mizbeach v'yein anushim yishtu beit Elohehem. They recline by every altar, are on garments taken in pledge, and drink in the house of their God wine bought with fines they imposed. Right. Garments taken in pledge, by the way, means that like there's a poor person who needs money, and so you would take the person, you would say, okay, but you take their garment in pledge, right, in order so that they would pay it back. And so that they're taking that and, like lounging on it.
Yeah. Plus, if you take a person's garment, you have to return it to him,
Mm-hmm.
right, because that's what he sleeps in.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is totally perverting.
Exactly, right. And he says also, he points out it's not, this is like they're not giving it back, right? And not only are they not giving it back, they're spiting the whole concept by using it essentially as a tablecloth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and clearly, I mean, one of the themes here is the abuse of the poor, which is also, just important, the bird's eye view here. Ba, 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 ba. Does anyone have and drink in the house of their God with like lowercase g?
Um, yes, yes,
Yes.
of their God,
Yeah.
Gods.
Yeah, I was wondering why JPS translates it as house of their God, right? I mean, that's the classic question, right? Is Elohim. Does that mean Elohim or as their God, capital G, right? Or is it God's lowercase? I was surprised that JPS translates it as God, capital G.
Well, this is a stone Chumash,
Mm-hmm.
stone Tanakh, and it definitely has lowercase.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Right. Right. I mean, yeah, like that. Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting. I guess it's just different ways of interpreting it. Okay. ואנוכי השמדתי את האמורים מפניהם, אשר כגובה ארזים גבהו, וחסון הוא כעלונים, ואשמיד פריו ממעל ושרשיו מתחת. Yet I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose stature was like the cedars, and who was stout as the oak, destroying his boughs above and his trunk below. All right, so I've destroyed the Amorites. Where? So this is, my guy, the way he phrases the way he frames this as now, God has listed what their sins are, and now God is adding this element of also you not only are you sinning against me in all these ways, you also have not had the hakarat tov, right? The gratitude of recognizing what I did for you in the past, right? What did I do for you already? I've already destroyed the Amorites, says God, right? I did these good things for you, and yet you have done nothing. And adding that in here with 10, ואנוכי העליתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, ואלך אתכם במדבר 40 שנה לרשת את ארץ האמורי. And I brought you up from the land of Egypt and led you through the wilderness 40 years to possess the land of the Amorite. Right? I did all this stuff for you. I saved you. And yeah, I would actually, I just thought of this. It'd be interesting I'm sure someone has done this, looked at the times that the Exodus comes up in the Navi literature, right? It's kind of, to me, it's like the it's ultimate rejection of God, but almost like the ultimate threat, right? When you have nothing else is to say, like, and I brought you from Egypt, just, the way a mother would say to a child, and I carried you in my womb, right? I changed your diapers. It's like, to me, it's like that equivalent, right? The most basic thing that God did for you. It's like the Exodus gets mentioned when you know you're really in trouble, right? Because it's going back to the very beginning. Yeah. And I think also helps emphasize things like the Shema, right? Why do we have to talk about Yetziat Mitzrayim every day, right? You have to really work to cultivate that sense of gratitude. It's not automatic. Yeah. God keeps going. "V'akim mibnechem leneviim u'mibachorechem lenizirim ha'af ein zot b'nei Yisrael ne'um Hashem." And I raised up prophets from among your sons and Nazarites from among your young men. Is that not so, O people of Israel, says God? Yeah, so this is like the third thing, that God's saying that God has done, raised up these prophets and Nazarites. It's a question about why Nizirim, the Nazarites, are included here. If anyone has a footnote or comment, I'd love to know what it says. My guy says because the Nevi'im like teach the people um like how to be good, and then or follow God, and the Nezirim literally model the behavior, right? The Nevi'im speak, and the Nezirim literally restrain themselves, right, or devote their lives to God. So it's a way of like they're complementary. Anyone have anything else? Okay, so these are all the good things. Now, what did the people do? V'tashku et hanizirim yain ve'al haniviim tzivitem le'emor lo tinav'u. But you made the Nazarites drink wine and ordered the prophets not to prophesy. Prophecy. I don't know how do you pronounce that word. Right. So you didn't let them do this, you sinners. Okay. הנה אנוכי מעיק תחתיכם כאשר תעיק העגלה המלאה להמיר. I will slow your movements as a wagon is slowed when it is full of cut grain. What is this? Meaning of verse uncertain. Okay, so now it gives, by the way, a totally different possible translation, the JPS notes, right? I will slow your movements as a threshing sledge is slowed. I suppose it's not super different. This is 13. Anyone have different translations that are interesting?
It's a similar translation.
Mm-hmm.
Behold, I will encumber you and your place just as a wagon full of sheaves is encumbered. But then the footnote says, God commands the prophets to hear and convey his words to the people.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Ve'avad manos mikal ve'chazak lo ya'ametz kocho ve'gibor lo yimeleit nafsho. Flight shall fail the swift. I hate that language. The strong shall find no strength, and the warrior shall not save his life. Does anyone have better translation of this pasuk? I don't like this one.
A little different.
What do you have?
Escape will elude the swift one. The strong one will not muster his strength, and the mighty one will not save his soul.
Uh-huh. I like the first part better. Okay, great. No. Yeah, it makes couple. All right.
Saving your soul and so saving your life is a little bit different.
Yeah, so my guy points out that it could mean lo yuchal livrach, right? You literally can't run away. Or lo yinatzel mimavet, right? You won't be saved from death, right? It depends how you understand nafsho. Is it your soul, like you'll die, right? Or you can't run away, which is maybe ultimately mean the same thing, but it probably has different implications in the moment. Anything else? Okay, we've got two more psukim. V'tofes hakeshet lo ya'amod, v'kal beraglav lo yimalet, v'rochev hasus lo yimalet nafsho. The archer shall not hold his ground, and the fleet-footed shall not escape, nor the horseman save his life. Ve'amitz libo bagiborim arom yanus bayom hahu neum Hashem. Even the most stout-hearted warrior shall run away unarmed that day. Right? Literally, arom means naked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone have that in the translation?
Yes.
Oh, what do you have?
Will flee naked on that day.
Oh, just will say, okay. Hmm. Yeah. Right. He says arom lo klei mean unarmed. Right. That's how Rashi understands it. Not literally naked, but the Ibn Ezra says, nope, arom bli begadim literally means naked.
Yeah,
Well,
with a
look at the way
comment,
they
with a
translated
comment
it,
that
if they mean unarmed, that makes more sense.
Right, because it's a gibor. Yeah, it does, definitely. Sorry,
so
Thera, what?
there's the comment that the stout-hearted will lose courage and not stand up against the enemy. Instead, they will remove their clothing to lighten their weight and flee.
Okay. Maybe clothing would mean armor?
Yeah.
Armor, it'd have the armor would be
Right.
up.
Yeah. I feel like that's the way it has to make
A coat
sense.
of mail,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have, as he that is courageous among the mighty shall flee away naked in that day.
He that is
Courageous. In other
courageous.
words, the one who really believes and is a good person, even that person's going to run away.
That's interesting. I'm just looking back to interesting. Mhm. Interesting. Hey, okay, yeah. I mean, look, I think that if we go verse to verse here, some of it is like similar to what we see in general in, Navi literature, which is all the ways we're going to be destroyed and, the different ways we won't be able to run away and save ourselves and all those things. I think what's of note here is, like I said earlier, the focus on the abuse of the poor as one of the major sins. It's not just about rejection of God. Rejection of God is part of that, but another part of it is really abuse of the poor, but just like flagrant, sort of making fun of the poor, right? Capitalizing on that. And then also, just considering, I think here sociologically, it's interesting of what is the experience right now of these people in the Northern Kingdom, right? They got all cozy with Amos, thinking, oh, here he is condemning all the different enemies. Now he's even going after Yehuda. Great, I'm all in. And now he goes after Israel. Not only does he go after Israel, but he goes after Israel with much more detail than he does the other, right? All the other nations is a strict formula, three, fourth not happening. This is like, no, here's all these horrible things that you've done. And now here's the way I'm going to destroy you. Nothing about tshuva, right? No option to change. It's just here's how you're going to be destroyed. So it's pretty heavy at this point, right? If you're Amos, you don't have friends. I mean, the Nevi'im and friends, but you can only imagine like how this is being received. So, any final comments, footnotes, anything? Straightforward. Okay. Let me